Good morning, everybody. This is episode 3 of the new podcast on Web3 applications in travel. Thank you so much for sticking with me. And we got Pablo Castillo today. Thank you very much, Pablo, for being a guest in the podcast. Pablo, could you tell us a little more about yourself, what you do, what Chain for Travel does, and what are your plans for the future?
Of course. So my name is Pablo Castillo. Hello, everybody. Good, nice to meet you. Simone, and nice to be here as well. So I'm CTO and co-founder of Chain for Travel. Chain for Travel, as the name already implies, has built a chain, so a blockchain for the travel industry. We have been tasked to do so by the Camino Network Foundation, which both companies are established here in Switzerland. And basically what we did is to look at the global travel industry. We saw some issues, some pressing issues, which blockchain technology can mitigate already today. But we selected blockchain technology mainly because we want to prepare the travel industry for the future and what's to come. And I will talk later on with Simone more about what our plans and details plan is in that perspective.
Very good. So first question first, this is something that I'm asking to all the guests on that side of a chair, and it is, give me your personal definition of what Web3 is, because I know that it's a pretty vague term and you can pretty much put everything you want under Web3, but I just want to put some context so we understand at least what we're talking about.
So for me personally, Web3 is nothing else than natural evolution of technology. So, I mean, there's a lot of discussion, what is Web 1, Web 2, Web 3? After Web 3, it gets a little bit fuzzy. For me, the main element of Web 3 is actually the decentralized part and also the ownership part. So during Web 1, we were able to read information. Web 2 is more, okay, users were able to interact with each other. And now Web 3, for me, is more or less the bracket between the technology that enables a user to own certain assets. And it's more focused around decentralization and privacy as well.
Okay, that's great. And you touched two topics that I think are extremely relevant when it comes to the travel industry. The first one is the centralization. So when we talk about decentralization, we start with the assumption that there is some level of centralization that we need to fix. And when it comes to travel, that is pretty much the case. I was talking to another guest and I was showing some data from a recent study, saying that 67% of room distribution is in the hands of two players. That's a pretty centralized industry in my book. So I think that the Web3, the centralized approach, could really fit into the travel industry because of this very reason. So first of all, would you agree with the statement? And what are the possible applications of decentralization in the space?
Yes. So similar to what the Web3 folks started with, the whole blockchain and Web3 community, the technology can definitely help to decentralize or disintermediate, but it's not only the main aim. One has to see that it's a little bit, it's a two-sided sword, right? I mean, on the one hand side, over the years, a lot of companies have helped build actually up this market power of the three major players. I mean, we can name it, Booking, Expedia, and Airbnb. They control large shares of the accommodation markets worldwide. For hoteliers at that point in time, 20 years back, it was a great opportunity to get exposure globally, right? I mean, they suddenly, with a very small and calculated budget, they could be, if they were, for instance, an Italian or a Swiss hotelier, you could reach people in Africa, South America, because Booking was doing the whole marketing for you. So a lot of, on the distribution side, a lot of hoteliers were not that distribution savvy. They didn't like the variable cost on the Google distribution side when it comes to ad marketing, SEO, SEM. So they opted actually for something which is very known in our industry. I pay commissions and somebody just books me. Now, what happened over the years is, of course, these players got stronger and stronger and stronger, and they not only dictated actually access to technology, but also the commissions. And now we are in some commissions level, which is almost unhealthy, and hotels have become dependent on them. And that's why a lot of companies now are actually also switching more again to alternative distribution methods, not only because they want to lower the costs and get less dependent on certain players, but also because it's about customer information and customer ownership and access to customer information. If Corona has shown something, it is very important that you have all the details of the customers. In some of the hoteliers would book through this kind of centralized platform, had no idea if the customer would arrive, how to contact the customer. So this has become a whole topic actually as well, accelerating maybe this wish to move away apart from the hard financial facts.
Don't you think this is like a big part of the problem is that when you centralize, and I can understand the reason why hotels went to companies such as Booking.com or Expedia or Airbnb, you know, and for a lot of these companies, you know, small, think about Southern Europe, right? So we're mainly an industry made of small independent properties. And a lot of these properties, they don't have the marketing strength to create their own distribution channel. So I can understand. And again, to your point, we're not saying that Booking.com or Expedia are evil, but just the centralized part of that could open like a risky route, being, for example, the fact that at some point they can wake up overnight, and this is exactly what happened with Expedia and Booking.com, and decide that from now on, you do not have any information about your customers, meaning you don't even have the email address of your customers. Or they can even come up with something that could be even, you know, more worrying. That could be something like, you know what, from tomorrow, we're going to charge you 35% commission. Because at the end of the day,
definitely.
They could, you know,
they
and
could.
It kind of happened with Airbnb as well, no?
Yes, I mean, you see those price hikes, right? But I think that's the business model, and it's anybody's participant in this kind of centralized ecosystem if you want to do it. If it's not, problem is there are little alternatives right now because the whole global travel industry were focused on this few players dominating the market. But it's similar with search, it's similar with social media. So there are actually a lot of this kind of centralization aspects in any kind of daily life routine we know of, right? I'm more worried actually not about that they decide something. I'm more worried that they don't want to move forward because apart from the commercial point, they're also a checkpoint when it comes to IT development. I mean, those companies we just were talking about 20 years ago, they were startups. Now, over time, they have grown to the biggest player in our industry. And they control not only access to customer pricing, markets, and so on, but it's also about the technical innovation side. So if they don't move, and we see that, for instance, as well with the GDSs, so global distribution systems in the airline sector, if they're not willing to move, the industry itself needs to find ways that they can work around that, because else, if the customer and society moves along, but their technical platform doesn't, then you're stuck again.
Okay, that's an interesting angle. So basically what you're saying is that the problem with like tech immobility in our industry could be because we're dominated by just a few providers that are not willing to innovate.
Sometimes not willing, but sometimes because they have a lot of other homework. I mean, look at Booking, look at Expedia, how they grew, how many companies they bought. The tech stack, which needs maintenance, they have a lot of APIs, they have a lot of raw product. So that all causes actually a startup, which is primarily at the beginning focused on innovation. Suddenly, half of your developers are working on maintaining and keeping alive the systems there is. So you become slower over time automatically. Yeah. Every revolutionary, even the Web3 revolutionary, in 20, 30 years down the road, they most probably will be conservative because technology always evolves. Society is a little bit slower. Legal framework are even more slower to evolve, right?
It makes total sense. There is an amazing book, not marketing oriented, but I think it's one of these books that you need to read in your lifetime, and that is David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. And that's a perfect example of that. You can see that that's not only the travel industry, that's pretty much everywhere. You know, the trick is to think as a startup, even when you start becoming like this Goliath. And I understand that it's not always possible. Tell me something else. When we talk about Web3, okay, for a lot of people not coming from the industry, this automatically means DeFi or crypto. So could you help me just putting some light on what is actually Web3, when compared to crypto or blockchain technology, and what is the connection between these different technologies?
There's a lot of misconceptions around Web3, definitely. I mean, a lot of people, as you say, for them it's blockchain equals crypto equals scam, because that's also a lot of things. I mean, there have been, like with any new technology, the bad actors are always the first one to move. There were a lot of rug pulls and stuff like that, right? I mean, for us, our understanding is we are a travel tech company, which happens to select blockchain as the base infrastructure layer. Why did we select blockchain? Because it's agnostic. I mean, our industry, if you look at it from a global perspective, if you zoom out, it's a huge supply chain, right? Many players working together: airports, airline, companies in the mobility sector, accommodations, and so on and so on. So it's a huge supply chain. So actually, what we do today, we bridge these players one to another by sending incredible amount of information, sometimes duplicate, sometimes with not updated, through different kind of means. APIs, fax is still around still today. So we try to keep this communication network floating somehow. And on top of the communication, which does not always work, especially if there are some disruption, flight is delayed, customers are not informed because they booked through an OTA, which has no information from the airline and so on. So it's kind of tedious and also cost intensive, and it's getting harder and harder to maintain, especially after Corona, because let's face it, during Corona, no travel company had the means and the money to invest and on their backlog and the innovation. So that's only coming now, right? So globally speaking, I would say the travel industry has a huge problem with legacy IT. They need to maintain and they need to upgrade. So we are definitely not up to speed. Web3 in general is a really nice concept, but it's not yet mass. That mass adoption has not been reached yet. I mean, if you look at wallets, handling of keys, it's still too clumsy, too complex. A lot of people are a little bit scared. What does this mean? So I'm responsible for my keys, not my keys, not my funds. Okay, not everybody understands, but suddenly it's like, okay, what happens if I lose them? Nobody can recover that. So I think on the usability side, we definitely, and I mean, there are many solutions now coming out, the more provider coming out, that helps. We need more educations as well. I mean, sometimes the Web3 community, I mean, it was a lot driven by developers, right? Developers are very intelligent people, but sometimes they are really bad when it comes to UX and also to marketeer some ideas. The core principle of Web3 are really great, but if you then try to explain that to somebody else, it's too complex. So it needs to be easier on the maintenance side, but also how we interoperate. If I want to, there are too many blockchain solutions out there as well. If I want to transfer something from another blockchain, I need first to find the swap to get that token, and then MetaMask. So it's definitely nothing where people would say, I buy rightly into that idea, is super easy. Right. Then also terminology. Sometimes they did a really bad job explaining what it is. What is a smart contract? Is it smart or is it a contract? No, actually, it's an application. What is an NFT? Wait, I will go and explain you what it's not. It's not a fungible token. Okay, what the heck is fungible token? So we need to make this kind of terminology much more clear and broader. And then, of course, there's the whole implication we saw of crypto. For me, myself, blockchain is a decentralized ledger. It's a decentralized database where you can do a lot of things, a lot of great things when it comes to tokenizing assets, real world assets, but also on automatization part. And in our industry, like the travel industry, where many parties work together, we still have a lot of manual work to do. This is just great. Another aspect of blockchain technology is also it's basically the only technology there exists where in one go you make a transaction, but you also transfer value. Meaning, with one API, you're able to book something and also to do the payment. Payment is one of the big pain points in our industry. We pay up to 3% payment costs, even more depending what kind of bank fees and credit card institutes are aligned. For what? That I pay as a customer? 3% is a lot of margin if you think in a low margin industry like the travel industry. I mean, I know tour operators who, if they reach 1% EBIT margin, they would be more than happy. Now go to ZF and tell them, hey, I can add you a double, triple that even. That's a huge gain. Also on the fraud side, I mean, we have as an industry in the hotel industry, globally speaking, pre-COVID, there was a survey once where we have like 24 billions in fraud, 24 billions in fraud and chargebacks. The airline industry has another billion. So with this technology, actually, that fraud could be reduced to almost zero. Of course, there's still malicious actors around, smart contracts get compromised, bridges get hacked and stuff like that. But these security topics will be better over time. But I think only looking at that, we can mitigate a lot of problems we have. Today, everybody's talking about the AI. AI, I personally think, has a great future, is a great technology. But if we feed them AI with unverified data, we are actually making problem bigger and worse than we have today. Let's look at hotel reviews, for instance. TripAdvisor, I think it was stated that 5 to 10%, that's the official number, of TripAdvisor reviews are fake. So this is harmful for our market, right?
Well,
so
there's another study that I was quoting the other day saying that when it comes to fake reviews, we are in the range of 60 to 70%.
Could be.
So,
I mean, I remember working for a former company. We got offers from companies saying, hey, you can buy thousands of reviews in packages, either for your company or against other companies. So that's a reality. It's also business behind that. So we can definitely do better by using blockchain technology to use also verified data. Some of our partners are doing exactly that, to become like the decentralized TripAdvisor, also making actually surveys when you do on the customer side really transparent, so that everybody has access to something which has been verified by a network, right?
I think when it comes to blockchain projects in general, the problem is that there are three aspects that you need to take into consideration if you want to grow like a healthy business. And that's one is scalability. The other one is, of course, decentralization. And the other one is a good user experience. And exactly. I think it's pretty easy to get two of those right. It's pretty hard to get all of the three right.
You are talking about the trilemma of the blockchain, right? The famous trilemma, almost. Yeah. Nevertheless, I think on the scalability, I mean, there's one thing a lot of people forget. The current blockchains currently can handle up to 4,000, depending on the project and algorithm assumed to that, transaction per second easily. Okay, good. What does it mean? When we compare the global search volume of the travel industry, 4,000 transactions per second is nothing. We are talking thousands and millions of search results delivered every second, every day, out on the global scale. So that's why actually we, for instance, are trying to combine blockchain, the best of the blockchain, with existing Web2 legacy interfaces. So what we are currently, for instance, building on top of the Camino blockchain, which is now live, we are building a decentralized messaging system, which is much more scalable, and also it's encrypted. So because one of the other problems, apart from the three you mentioned, is of course also the transparency. We are focused on B2B business. A lot of B2B businesses are not willing to disclose everything on the blockchain because they don't want to go on a public blockchain. It's less comfy if you want to connect to an ecosystem, but they want to also to keep, for instance, kickbacks, commission deals. They want to keep it private because that's their USPs. They want to give that away. So what we are now building is an encryption layer on top of the blockchain, which enables wallet-to-wallet communication. We believe very much into wallets. We believe that wallets will play a much bigger role in future of society. I mean, looking only at crypto as one of the first maybe movers into wallet direction, but now we see Google, Apple wallets merging, Apple wallets playing around with digital assets as well. So that will come. And for me personally, I mean, you asked at the beginning of the interview about Web3. Most of the communication tools our society uses today are still very much Web2 focused, right? So if you think of wallets as the next stage of Outlook, for instance, that would mean that we can not only read and write and reply, but we can also transfer assets. We can also do some kind of other marketeer things. I will be running around with my whole transaction history. So that means if I, as a user, consent that some companies can read this transaction history, can read the content of my wallet, see what kind of mileage cards I have, what kind of memberships, what kind of NFTs I have, the topic of marketing, profiling, curated content suddenly becomes much more tangible and feasible than what we have been trying to do today by collecting profiles and cookies and trying to build our own profile about the customer, or the digital twin about the information which were available to us. In future, it will be the customer coming to you and saying, this is me. And if you want to use my data, I want some kind of benefits. And also, I mean, if you want to use my data, that will also have a huge implication in the travel scene when it comes to EIDs, so decentralized IDs. Most of the governments worldwide are working on that. There will be digital money. Apart from crypto, we are more focused on CBDCs and stable coins. So that will also be a reality. So our customer will be running around with digital money, with his digital identity. Our industry needs to make sure that if a customer with a wallet connects to our infrastructure, that we understand that. We don't want the customer, again, typing in all his information. We can take that over, even GDPR compliant. We are still, as an industry, asking the wrong questions. For instance, we are asking when you rent a car, we are asking, how old are you? You never have received from Europe Car most probably a congratulations, happy birthday email, because they don't use it for that. They just want to make sure you're older than 21 years old. But that's actually something which goes into GDPR. You don't need that information. A flag like saying you're older than 21, it's verified on the blockchain, would already be more than sufficient. So for us, this project is more using blockchain as a mean to mitigate some of the issues we have today, and also to preparing the industry actually for what's to come.
Don't you think that's an interesting angle? It just made me think of something else. Like in a lot of other industries, we are used to a level of personalization that is pretty high, right? Think about like retail, for example. I was reading this interesting statistics that Alibaba is already making more money on suggestions than on actual searches. Okay, this means that the system knows you pretty well and it can personalize the results and suggest you something even before you know that you want them. Now, this is something that we've been talking about for the last 20 years, you know, hyper personalization in travel. And this is, to me, it's just a freaking buzzword, because we want to reach that with a system that actually works so much in silos that it's pretty much impossible to get an hyper personalized process, because some of the data will be on a PMS, that's a silos. Some other information will be on a airline company, that's another silos. Some will be on the revenue management system, that's another silos, and so forth. Can you explain in simple terms why switching to this approach that is platform-based, so it's like Marriott-based, Hilton-based, American Airline-based, to a system that is wallet-based could be beneficial even in terms of personalizing the experience for the guest?
On the one hand side, as I said, it is because the customer tells you who he really is. I mean, if you are able to understand that, that will put you in the same position that Visa MasterCard is today. They basically can predict what are your next purchases and if you are going to divorce yourself within the next 12 months or not, based on what they see. So that's scary. I mean, Alibaba and the others are even more scary, but in Alibaba's case, it's of course, or in some of the Chinese cases, it is also through wallets. I mean, there are these super apps in China which collects and connects a lot of different suppliers into one app. They have payment, they have the booking confirmation, they have communication, everything in there. So it's a whole ecosystem of data, which at the end, it's one, you can basically, all the transactions you can basically pinpoint to one wallet. And that's why they are able to learn so much, right?
Well, tell me something, because the super app model never really worked for the Western world, right? Or like, I think everybody tried that. Even Uber recently started, you know, selling hotels and tried to create this huge super app. Do you think that when it comes to wallet adoption, the Western world will be penalized because it doesn't have that approach, one in all approach that the Asian customers have?
I think the Asians are definitely far ahead of the thinking, but one also has to recognize two things. On the one hand side, there are countries in Asia, or also India, which completely jumped over the personal computer era. They went straight to mobile, right? So the technical development was a different one. Then also some of these countries tend already from the culture think in ecosystems, think in society first. We in the West, we may have been earlier further developed when it came to technology, but then we definitely were again focused in our silos. So that's also one of the issues of the travel industry you mentioned. So each vertical, so hotellery, airline, cruise ships, they have their own systems. Each company within that have their own systems. So the sharing of data is almost impossible. And this was actually one of the reasons why we said blockchain is cool, but let's not build solutions of blockchain. Let's focus on the infrastructure. Let's turn it around, because again, if you build infrastructure solution, or if you build solutions right from the start, then basically what will happen? Some companies, if they understand the benefit of blockchain, they will go to Algorand, some will go to Ethereum, some will go to Polygon, some will go then. Then again, in 20 years' time, we are in the same mess again. Everybody's somewhere else if this blockchain survives, and you have to do the interoperability stuff. So we said, okay, why not turn it around? Why not create a platform where every company, every vertical, and this is also the new thing, that actually airlines, loyalty schemes, airports, transportation, car rentals, they can all work with this same technical platform, because it's agnostic. A transaction is a transaction. It doesn't matter what you are booking or trying to put on the blockchain. The only thing that changes is the metadata and the front end, of course, for those use cases. But everybody would already be in this ecosystem. Everybody would already be in the same standard. So that would remove a lot of friction already. I mean, in the travel industry, you mentioned it as well. We've been talking about connected trip and seamless travel for 20 years and plus years. It always goes back. It does not work because there's too much friction. There's not this super app. There's not this aggregation layer across all those systems, which are there because you would never finish if you would start right now. Right? So that's also one of the benefits of having decentralized players in place, because they can aggregate data from multiple sources. Now, that comes with pros and cons, as we have discussed before. And I personally hope that if you really now can create a concept, and the travel industry starts using this concept, that over time we will be more and more efficient, because every data is on the same platform. You can steer very well the access to the personalized data. So airports can start working with governments, can start working with airlines, not only to access the data, but keep it updated. So when it comes to flight disruption, travel disruption, where are my baggages and stuff like that. So that can all be, everything will become more transparent, which is also one of the core principles of blockchain.
And do you think, like, in terms of problems with adoption, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think that this could be perceived as a friction by the guest? Let me give you an example. I was having another chat with another guest a couple of episodes ago. And as a destination, they launched, a few years ago, this NFT proof of stake, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to name the destination. It was a cool idea, but the problem was that it was on their on blockchains. So if you wanted to redeem that NFT, you had to download a wallet that only worked on that blockchain. Yeah. You could not do anything else. You could not transfer to another wallet and so forth. So do you think that this is, and I think this is our responsibility, do you think we are missing the point here? Because we keep building stuff on top of, again, legacy systems. Even though they are decentralized, they are blockchain, whatever, they are still legacy systems. And the guest as the guest doesn't want to create 10 different email addresses just to sign up to a newsletter, of course, the guest doesn't want to create 10 different wallets to work on 10 different decentralized apps.
Yeah.
Did I get it right?
Yes, so definitely there's too much friction also in the Web3 space. It's too complex as well. It's too many keys, too many accounts, too many different solutions out there. I think that will change over time. It will become easier. I personally believe that the travel industry has a huge impact on usability, so they could really drive that. I mean, what we are currently focused on is B2B business. So how do we improve the collaboration between actors of the B2B space? Whatever they do front-end wise to their customers, that's another topic. We have one Web3 startup who is B2C focused, now starting next month on Camino. They're going to launch Sleep.io, which is the Web3 native fund. So they are already pure Web3 focused, but that's very community-driven decision. We focus on Web3 folks. You need to have a MetaMask. You need to have a wallet, else you cannot interact with us. So that's okay. But overall, I think we should reach a stage where the customer doesn't know that there is blockchain involved. So he should be able to log in with his today's means. In future, anything will be biometric anyway. I mean, look at the WorldCoin project, which has been criticized at some point. But we know that all hardware suppliers, be it mobile phones, be it laptops, have already private secure enclaves. So there, our biometrics will be stored, our keys will be stored, and I think it will be much easier in future to access that, because nobody can keep track of all those seed phrases and solutions. Technology is advancing very much, but at the end of the day, it must be a human, easy to use interface to really be successful. But again, I personally would love to reach a state where we don't discuss blockchain as a piece. Blockchain for me is a tool. Blockchain for me is a decentralized database, a decentralized ledger. In the old times when you were responsible for IT department, if you bought some piece of software, the first question would never be what kind of database it's running, except you're the IT guy who needs to maintain it. But for the rest, it's more focus on function, focus on use cases, focus on real value for the customer, and then it will pick off.
That's an interesting angle, because I was talking to a friend the other day, and they have a startup selling tokenized rooms, right? Mm-hmm. And when they first started, the whole marketing message was, we sell rooms as NFTs. And at some point, they told me, you know what? We had to erase the word NFT from all our marketing strategies. And that to me made total sense, because technology should be, if anything, an afterthought. Like my father is 69, right? Is on Facebook probably 6 hours a day, like any boomer is. But anyway, the thing is that if I ask my dad, do you know how the internet works? He doesn't know. You know, he has no idea. He doesn't even care. It works. Just to him, it could be magic. Okay, that's the same with Web3 projects. And I think that, to your point, it's always a semantic issue, because we're focusing on the underlying tech. We're not focusing on what we can solve with that technology.
Yeah.
So
I think you have to, maybe to that point, you have been more time in the space than I have been. I mean, I got in touch with blockchain first time in 2018, and to try to understand it, I didn't get it at that point in time, honestly, because it was still too slow, too complex. Why should this be superior than what we are using today? It has come it has been a nice development, and I definitely believe that it will even be developed further. But what struck me when I entered this space again after so many years is that there was still too much talk about crypto, too much talk about NFTs, too much talk about gaming. So what people don't know is that over 65 different industries are using blockchain on a daily basis. Logistics, supply chain, pharmaceuticals, and so on. But they don't make the fuss that the Web3 community made out of it. So it's not about get rich fast. This unfortunately was a reality in many Web3 projects. It was more about using the best technology for specific use cases. And we, for instance, are convinced that blockchain technology makes a lot of sense in a decentralized industry like the travel industry, where we have 95% of the players are small and medium-sized enterprises competing against the big ones. So why not use this kind of decentralized technology also out of the reasons what we learned? I mean, travel is always prone to some crisis. Corona, most probably the biggest crisis we focused in the travel industry in the last in this century, right? I mean, there were less people traveling than during the World War. Imagine that one. A lot of people don't know that. It was so disruptive that we really had a lot of problems. Had we had that technology installed everywhere, it would have been for a lot of things. Entry requirements clear, health issues clear, health passports clear. Let's say, okay, where are my clients? Where are my baggages? How do I call it back? Money flows. I mean, during Corona, unfortunately, many players stopped paying, or they received payment but would not give it back. And everybody was fighting for cash. Technology like blockchain also enables us not only to use more on the automatization part, but also to rethink a little bit the money flows, which have been around in the past decades, actually, in the travel industry, and has been more or less established. We can do better than that, actually, by using new approaches.
Totally. And again, to your point, again, I think there are so many similar points with what happened with the internet in the late 90s, right? So if you remember, at some point, there was this huge bubble and everybody wanted to get on the .com wagon to to an extent that there is this beautiful study. It's called Rose by Any Other Name, if I remember correctly, saying that companies that had nothing to do with the web in the late 90s, just by changing their names and adding .com at the end, they saw their share increase by up to 70%. And I think this was where the blockchain was back in 2018. And so it made total sense. Now we're understanding that the main reason we use blockchain is because it is solving a problem, not because it's a sexy technology to use.
But you could use the parallel to AI and KI in nowadays, right? I mean, there are many, many companies promoting that they have AI, and if you look closer at the project, you find out that they just have an API to ChatGPT in the background. So it's not even their own large mental model. So it's a lot of similarity.
It's semantic. Again, it's
semantic.
AI?
It's marketing. It's of course also companies should always do their homework, their due diligence before engaging with other companies. For us, I think really blockchain technology has reached a state where it can be used. It's proven. It has been around for more than 20 years. To say the concept, Bitcoin has been around. I mean, Bitcoin is one of the, I think, the only system which never failed since it started up. I mean, that's also one of the topic in the travel industry, where you have to say the decentralized nature can help with a lot of cyber attacks. We've been seeing, and I can predict you, we will see much more failure of crucial systems because they are hitting deadlines, they're hitting end of life cycles, they're hard to maintain, and cybersecurity is increasingly one of the biggest risks, which has also been a little bit lacking funding in the travel industry the past few years because we didn't have money to invest into that, right?
Sure.
So yes, definitely you can say there's a lot of similarity, and of course there was a lot of bad actors. We as a company, we sometimes have to fight this kind of preconcepts or this kind of wrong ideas. That's why we also do a lot of education in that perspective and saying, hey guys, let's deep dive. At the end of the day, I'm not selling software. I'm selling the vision of the travel industry can do better. Here's an open source platform which has been already developed for you guys. We can help you connect into partners in the network, either to solve some problems or to build solutions if you don't have the capability yourself, but it's completely up to you. The idea really is, let's democratize travel a little bit more. Let's work together as an industry, and then we can definitely make some step forwards. Does it stop there? No, because technology always evolves. I mean, we will see a lot of changes. And also right now, one of the challenges on the global scale, of course, is that the legal frameworks are not up to speed to the technical possibilities there are. Some countries ban it. Some countries are not willing to participate on global blockchain projects because they say, no, we want to control data flow in our country. We first need to check what does this mean? What is an asset? How do we put that? How do we protect our citizens? And in other areas, like here in Europe, we are quite ahead. For once, when it comes to this kind of regulation. I mean, Switzerland was one of the reasons why we set it up here, had in that point in time when we founded the company, most advanced legal framework when it comes to blockchain technology. Now, MiCA, Europe, is coming up with digital assets. But more and more we will see, and society will understand, and also the hotellery or the travel industry as general will understand that digitalizing real-world assets can be beneficial in a lot of senses, be it tracking, ownership, making things transferable, like you said with your colleague, with secondary marketplaces, which is a huge market and a nice use case, which basically is also empowered by blockchain and the trust you give. I mean, the classical marketplaces we have today, like Amazon or also eBay, you always have to trust the other guy. If I'm a seller, I have to trust that they receive the money. Well, that I can control more or less because I can send the good only the moment I receive the money. But the buyer needs then to trust you that you're really sending the object and that the object you have been promoting on the web page is what you said. It is blockchain technology. This happens in the same instance. And that's only one example where we can do definitely better and maybe be more innovative and also solve some customer pain points.
That's great. And again, now that we're moving from this is new, this is pretty cool, this is probably we can make, if we build something on the blockchain, we can make an exit in 6 months and live on whatever island. We're reaching the point where we can actually do something that is interesting on the blockchain. And again, to your point, a lot of companies, they're already doing it. They're not making a fuss out of it. when I drink my coffee in the morning, the Lavazza is already just tracking pretty much everything on the blockchain. They don't even talk about it because it doesn't make the coffee better. It just makes their process better. So to make a real example in the travel industry, I want to talk a little about Camino. So can you tell me a little more about Camino, what it is, why it was created, and what problems you guys are trying to solve?
Yeah. So Camino is actually a fork of the Avalanche blockchain. We had a look at different kind of blockchain and base technology around that. Came to the conclusion that none of that really is 100% up to all the requirements we had. But Avalanche, at that point in time, when it came to transaction per second, sustainability, so eco-consciousness when it comes to consumption of electricity, and also to the flexibility with the subnet structure, was the perfect choice. So we forked that and we changed a few things. For instance, in our network, all validators are from the travel industry, so they have to go to a KYB process. Every validator has exactly the same stake.
I need to stop you there. Can you expand the acronym for people that doesn't know?
Sure, sorry. KYB is Know Your Businesses. That means actually that we work with an external identity provider, which the company needs to verify themselves. So they need to say, hey, I'm HospitalityNet. Here are my legal documents. Please accept me. And if the only information we receive back is basically, yes, it's proven that guy is really who he says, or that company is really who he says. So why do we do that? On the one hand side, we wanted to increase trust within a very conservative industry like the travel industry, saying, hey, you can be sure that this is not a 12-year-old kiddo from the States or from North Korea validating your transaction. So that was one of the ideas, saying, okay, you need to be KYB'd. And KYB, or Know Your Businesses, in future should also help to engage in business. We are talking here about the consortium blockchain, so it's primarily focused on business-to-business transactions. So that means also that in future you can use this flag to engage with companies you don't even know, because they have already been vetted. So the trust factor of the blockchain delivered out of the box through this system is actually quite nice for companies who want to scale globally, right? So that was one of the differentiator. Then the second point I was mentioning, everybody has exactly the same stake. In most of the blockchain projects we saw that any company can either have bigger stakes associated to a validator or even get delegated stakes from other users. So that in most of the cases leads to, I have more power in the network when it comes to voting, to the amount of transactions again. Okay, do we want to do that? No, we want to be Swiss in that perspective, and everybody has one vote. Doesn't matter if you would be Expedia joining as a validator, or if you are a small hotel at the Gardasee, definitely both have one vote. This is very appealing for a lot of companies who are small and medium-sized enterprises, right? And what we have built basically currently is a fork. We adapted that. We went live in April. Now we are live since July. We passed the security audit. We tested it with more than 26 validators. We have roughly 150 plus companies from across the travel industry in our network, because Camino is much more than only the technical platform. It's also a business network on top of that. So what we usually do as Chain for Travel, because as said, we are infrastructure focused, we connect companies with similar use cases or similar pains to say, okay, why don't you work together with those guys and try to figure out a way to be more efficient together? And this is working quite nicely, I would say. Since half of this year, we are also building up more on our socials, so Telegram group, Discord channel. We are pumping those figures up as well with the community to get them more involved as well. As a company, maybe worth mentioning, we are not running for an IEO or ICO. So we already co-funded. So we had a pre-seed investment of 4.3 million. We had a private token sale last summer conducted where we raised more or less the same amount. And this money is what we are using right now to build the platform. Okay, that's done. Now we're further developing it with the T-chain, that's the travel-specific chain, with the messenger on top of that, and some other features. And we are doing a lot of it in the area of education. So helping companies better understand what are the use cases. Some of the use cases, I mean, sometimes it's quite hard because there are many. There are, of course, the use cases around secondary markets. So create like an NFT out of a booking or a digital asset out of a booking. In case you cannot travel, you can transfer and sell that to somebody else. Some use cases are quite unsexy, like settlement between companies. right? I mean, it's like something customers never see, or like voucher use cases where suddenly if you book something on an OTA with a specific airline, for each of those bookings, the customer gets an email with a QR code, for instance. That QR code is nothing else than actually an NFT behind that. If you scan that, an NFT gets destroyed. So you already have actually the possibility of making sure that you cannot copy that NFT or that ticket, or you can then also make sure that the moment it's scanned, that the money flows between those two companies for a coffee on an airplane ticket, for instance. Nothing special, but if you know the back end process behind that, it's quite substantial. Then we have companies engaging very much into sustainability. Sustainability is one of the top 3 strategic initiatives in any bigger company nowadays. But let's face it, we do a lot of greenwashing as an industry. So nobody checks today, is that money that clients are paying for SAF or CO2 compensation really going to that project, or is it stuck somewhere in the middle? Does the company even compensate what they are telling to the public? More and more legislation is coming there as well. So when it comes to transparency and reporting, I think blockchain is a great mean to actually support this kind of things. Then we have, of course, a lot of use cases around loyalty. Loyalty, I mean, if you look at loyalty schemes, that's actually the first points, and that are perfect tokens. So you can incentivize your customer to do something, upload a picture, write a review. You can give him some kind of easy points without even entering e-money licenses or something like that, but playing around with gamification, with customer loyalty, and then also enabling that customer to use this point within your ecosystem or with partnerships. So that's also a possible use case which they're working on. What else on the top of my mind? So we have also companies now looking at wallet rates. So basically, again, talking with customer has a wallet that you can basically send him specific rates, not yet personalized rate, but more or less like in a closed shop environment, who are not public rate. This can be interesting for some kind of distribution channels as well. When they have distressed stock, just sell it at the cheapest price, right? And these are some of the use cases currently being built on the hotel infrastructure side, but we work with airlines, we work with airports. Some of those use cases I'm not able to disclose because we are under NDA. But there are a lot of little ecosystems helper, I would call them, who also deliver quite information. For instance, Global Monitoring, A3M, is one of the companies who will now launch in September an app where they will basically provide traveler information on chain so that you are very secure that these are the entry requirements for that country. You can always go to that. You can verify that as a single source of truth. Same happens with Giatta, who is a huge non-bookable content provider who plans to put hotel information on chain, which then you can use for, okay, at that point in time, the hotel information looked like this. The customer booked it on a website. That website showed this information or did not show the information. So it's clear whose fault it is. One of the big problems in our industry sometimes are licitations around different suppliers. Whose fault is it? If we would have a decentralized database where we can prove it was that guy, it's not the carrier's fault because the pilot arrived on time. It was maybe the guy from the aviation fuel or the cleaning crew was not on time. So then there would also be millions and millions in efficiency and claims be reduced because it's clear. Or look at topics like one of our startups is working on that, of claiming. I mean, in the EU, for instance, if your flight is more than 3 or 4 hours, I don't remember, 3 or 4 hours delayed, you get eligible for a compensation by the airline. So now in old days, it was quite hard because the airline would hide that kind of customer information somewhere very deep on their website. You would be for hours in the call centers. But hey, this is something we can automatize with smart contracts. So we know customers on that plane. We know customer airline is delayed. So that triggers the smart contract for the payout. So some insurances are looking into that one. So I could go on and on and on. There are many use cases being conceptualized. As I said, we have 150 partners right now. I would say 2/3 of them are going to run a validator because they already bought the tokens for that. Then 20% are now actively building something, and I would say 30 to 40% are now starting to understand better what are the means, what can we use this technology for. Some of them company we also support with hackathons. For instance, there's one bigger German tour operator right now organizing a hackathon focused on blockchain and smart contracts. So his internal IT department gets the first actually exposure to this kind of new technology, because let's face it, especially in the travel industry, the knowledge of smart contracts and how to create an NFT or a token, how a blockchain works, is not yet so abundant, because there was no need for that, and today's applications are not running on that.
That's the perfect way of saying it. There was no need for that, and that is, to me, where we'll start seeing the blockchain not as a novelty, but as something that we can actually use to build something on top of that. Is when it's solving a problem that is totally is right now. Yeah. Okay, the last one, I took a little more time than expected, but it was super interesting. So let's say tomorrow I got an amazing idea for a travel company, right? Why should I build on Camino rather than picking another blockchain?
Yeah. On the one hand side, I think Camino is the most equitarian. So you're on the same eye height like with all the other players. Then it's gas fees, of course. I mean, something I did not mention so far is that we also, one of the reasons why we forked is that the consortium should be able to really focus on and steer the gas fees itself, especially if the token gets listed at some point, it will be volatile. If it goes up, then of course also the transaction in theory would be more costly. We pride ourselves that we can compete with any layer 2 out there when it comes to the gas fees. And the consortium can steer it. So if a consortium members feels like, hey, we are getting too expensive, can we please put it down? And this is really needed in a seasonal industry. I mean, some of the blockchains works like, okay, the more traffic there is, the more gas fees you pay. We have the base fee under control. And then, of course, it depends on the complexity of the smart contract or the transaction you want to execute, what's on top, but it's really low. I think that's a tangible one. Then the more important one is, apart from being a technical platform, we are a business ecosystem. So anybody wants to do business with somebody, we connect them together. You will find like-minded people. You will find a lot of interest of people. You also find some investors in our network. And the Camino Network Foundation also has a grant program where we support startups to basically say, hey, if you want to join us, if you build something and you nice use case, you get a grant. 30 compared to other blockchains as well, we have a quite unique distribution of the transaction fee. So each transaction fee, which is very low, 40% gets burned, 30% goes actually back to the treasury of the DAC, as we call it, so Decentralized Autonomous Consortium, to support startups. And 30% goes to the validators. So it's really, if you're part of the consortium, the validators are the ones steering it. It's the government body. They're receiving a fraction of each transaction as an incentive. You will not get rich. So it's not like Bitcoin mining and stuff like that, but it should cover your hardware cost. And on top, if there are a lot of transactions, of course, a little bit more for the effort of securing the network, right? So I would basically say, if you think blockchain and travel, then definitely have a look at Camino. Because out of all those facts, I would say the business network should not be underestimated. The work the foundation does in VS Chain for Travel in connecting people, especially this is very hard in the travel industry, right? I mean, if you as a startup would like to have access to content, then most of the travel companies are not willing to give an API because they don't know you, that you don't get a code, you don't get access to the API because the payment, how does that look like? Or you get some kind of paper contract where you say, okay, I have to do prepayment all the time. I cannot even start selling before I really have to pay them. So it's a little bit egg and chicken problem. I think with this technology, we can definitely help those startups faster than any other one.
Okay, you convinced me. So basically you are the infrastructure provider, a facilitator, a connector, to a certain extent also a startup incubator.
We hope so, yes. And currently, I mean, we support a lot of startups. I mean, for them, it's embarking on blockchain quite the natural choice, right? Because they have greenfield approaches. They don't have legacy systems, so they can start already using an established modern technology. For legacy players, it's of course a little bit more challenging because they have now 99% of their business comes from the legacy systems. So why should they start doing something on blockchain? There again, we say, listen, it must be of value. You are the ones selecting the use cases, the business model you would like to do, or the new partners you would like to work with on the blockchain space. But looking a little bit ahead, 5-10 years in the future, if there is digital money, if there is digital IDs, if there are customers with wallets, and you want to do some kind of personalized marketing or understanding analytics, how do you do that with today's systems? So, and the thing is, you compared it a few times today as well to the rise of the internet, right? The problem or the big challenge, I think, if this technology really starts to pick up speed, if we see mass adoption happening, like you mentioned, a lot of other industries are using it, fashion, gaming are now using it, that will spill over to all the other industries as well at some point in time. So if that happens, the change will be faster than when the internet came. Why? 2000, let's say end the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, almost nobody had an internet connection at home. Nobody had mobile phones. Today, we have 4 billion connected devices worldwide. And the device doesn't matter. So connectivity is not an issue anymore. So if companies have the feeling like, well, the internet came and then it took 7 years till the smartphone came out, and then we saw actually Web 2 picking off. So most probably I have 5 to 10 years in the future. I would say you're wrong. If the adoption comes, it will go faster. And also don't forget, similar to when Web 2 started or the internet revolution started, those skills were on high demand. I mean, finding developer, building up your knowledge around the space, building up the concepts in your head, understanding what you can tokenize, that takes time, that takes engagement. That's why we are trying to build a platform which is open source. Everybody can build on top of that without license fees and nothing. And the idea is really to expose the travel industry to these new technologies so that they get involved early enough and don't get surprised again, like with the internet.
Yeah, makes total sense. And on top of that, technology is becoming more and more exponential rather than linear. Yep. And so again, to your point, this is not something that we will see in 20 years. This is probably something that we'll see in the next few years. Yep. So yeah, better be ready. Pablo, thank you so much for your time. What is the best way to get in touch with you if listeners want to know more about Camino or Chain for Travel?
So you can reach me anytime via email, pablo.castillo@chainfortravel.com, via Discord. We're quite active on Discord, on Twitter, LinkedIn, I'm present. So just reach out to me on any channel, and I hope I will give you feedback anytime soon.
So thank you so much for being with us today. And again, guys, if you want to know more, there is still available on Amazon the definitive Web3 glossary published by HospitalityNet, myself, and all the amazing people at Polybius. We still have a few free copies in the office, so you can get in touch with HospitalityNet. We will be more than happy to send you one. Pablo, again, thank you. I love what you guys are doing at Camino. Just if you wanted to understand more, just check them out, because I think it's a great source of evangelic understanding as well. It's not only a commercial thing, right?
Good. Thank you very much for having us, Simone, and have a nice afternoon. Bye, guys.
Ciao, guys. Speak soon. Bye.